life with these things is like a tapestry. You know, you have a beautiful picture, you have your thread, and you're sewing according to the patterns and the colors. And then you turn it over, you tie a knot, and you start your next color. But then sometimes you forget a color from this corner, so you have to go back. Anyway, the back of the tapestry looks like a mess. Mm-hmm. But when you turn it over, you see a perfect, beautiful picture with all the right colors in place.
Welcome to On Air with Chai, a podcast that inspires, brings hope, shows resilience, and strength. In today's interview, we're going to hear about heartbreak, the loss of a son, the disconnect from God. We're also going to hear about strength, love, and most importantly, community and support. Bracha Silver takes us through the tragic loss of her son Avi and how she managed to pull through day by day. Take a listen. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of On Air with Chai. Today I am joined with Mordechai Rothman, Executive Director of Chai Lifeline Canada, and our very, very special guest, Bracha Silver. Bracha Silver has come to us with an incredible story of her son Avi. A lot of sadness and heartbreak through it, but at the end of it, I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, though, there was some kind of joy and relief in it through what I've seen.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, you know, on one point, like it's still heartbreaking. But the joy is that I picked myself up together with my children and we moved on and we're doing great things. And at the same time, there's not a minute or second of the day that we don't mention Avi's name, think about him, remember a story, an event, and always talk about him.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Who are you? Who's Avi? What's your story?
Okay. First of all, thank you for inviting me, and I love to talk about Avi at every opportunity given because I'm happy when people remember him and talk about him, and I feel good as a mother that his name is still alive in his memory. So I'm a mother of 6 children, Kanei Hara. I have 5 boys and a little girl.
Who's your favorite? I won't tell it easy.
All of them in really different ways. But actually, Avi was my most challenging kid out of them all. I always say this when I speak to people. He was my most handsome, beautiful, 6 foot, tall, blonde, crystal blue eyes, personality plus, bright, street smart, and a heart of gold. But he was a big bandit. He was a big troublemaker all the time. And we used to fight a lot.
What number? Is the oldest, the youngest?
He's smack in middle. He's my 3rd boy.
Okay.
My 3rd boy, smack in middle. We fought the most over pick up your clothes, put them in the laundry basket. Why is your room so messy? Why do you come home late? What are you doing? Who are you hanging out with? Like, there was always an issue throughout the day with what he was doing. But we loved each other very much. We fought good and we loved good. Every single day he would say, "Ma, you know that I love you." I say, "Avi, you're just being charming. You're just trying to butter me up. This is not a real kiss." And he used to tell me, "Ma, like, don't kiss me because my skin, I don't want to get any acne." I said, "Come over here, you tall boy." Anyway, but so he was my 3rd child, and he was always very health conscious, always had avocados, bananas, worked out, healthy. I'll never forget one day he was with us, we're having Friday night Shabbos dinner, and he wasn't like himself. And I looked at him and I said, "Avi, how come you're not laughing and joking with your brothers like you used to? Like, what's the matter? Is something up?" He says, "No." He looked at me like I was the weird one. Like, "No, I'm totally fine." So I said, "Okay, maybe I was just over reading him. But I watched him throughout the meal, and I sensed something was different. And I didn't know what it was. And as the weeks went on, I called up some of his friends to see if they also noticed a change in his personality. Maybe 1 out of 5 friends says, yeah, he's a little bit more quieter. Anyway, one day he says, Ma, I need a winter jacket. So, okay, let's go to Yorkdale. So, of course, I wanted to take him to the Gap, and he had to go to a designer store. That's Avi. Or else, I'm not getting a jacket. Like he's doing me the favor. I said, fine, we went to this, I don't even know what it was called, in Yorkdale, this designer store. I said, choose a jacket. I bought him a jacket, and I bought him boots, and a hat and a scarf, and I said, now you look good, but you have to zipper your jacket. You can't go out like a cool guy when there's a blizzard and just be cool and leave your jacket open when it's snowing on you. It's all true. And he says, nah, Ma, don't worry. And then I was thinking, and then he said to me, Ma, I feel like my hands are always cold. I feel a little tingling in my hand. And right away, in my mind, I said, why does he feel tingling? He's young. He's only, at that time, he was 23. He's healthy. He's built. Why would a person feel tingling? Anyway, so I noted the personality change that Friday night and that something, and I got scared inside. I guess it's called a mother's intuition. So I said to him that week, I said, listen, Avi, I want to just take you to, let's start off by Dr. Geft. I know he's your pediatrician, and he's going to refer us to another doctor. Just want to make sure you're okay. He says, Ma, I'm not going to Dr. Geft. And Avi, you're going for 1 minute. It takes a second. Let him just have a referral. Of course, he didn't want to listen. Another week went by. And I was I was worried inside. I felt something, but I didn't know what. I just felt very worried. And then there came about 2 weeks later, it came that Friday night. And I remember I was laying down on the couch, and at that time, all my kids, except for my oldest one, was at home with me. They were all in camp. I said, wow, isn't it a nice Shabbos? Everything's quiet. Everybody's doing what they have to do. It's so good. I hope everything is good. I'm always worried when it's too good. And all of a sudden, that Friday night, it was 2:30 in the morning. We got, the doorbell was ringing. My son, Simcha, and I ran down to the steps. We didn't open the door. We just looked to see who it was, and it was 2 of his friends. So I opened the door. I recognized them, and they said, Bracha, you better come to the hospital. And I said, did Avi get into an accident or something? Is he going to be okay? Just come down. So I came down, and it was at Sunnybrook, and I remember the doctor right away called me to the desk. He showed me on the computer, and he says, are you Avi's mother? I said, yes. He says, I want to show you something. And he took the computer, and he said, this is a picture of Avi's brain. And you see this little thread going through? I said, yeah. It's like a thread, not thicker than a thread that you sew with. He says he has a brain tumor. And I looked at him and I said, are you crazy? I said, what are you? Are you a staff doctor or are you an intern? So he says, I'm a staff doctor. No, I'm an intern. I said, yeah, okay, call me a staff doctor, please. This is not true. What are you talking about, Blaine? He's tall, he's healthy, he's built. What are you talking about? So the staff doctor came immediately, and he told me it's a brain tumor. I said, so get it out. Look, why is it there? Take it out. Do something. And that's when everything started. It was like the world came crushing down, and I was crushed to the ground. Crushed to smithereens. And then, the doctors came in and everything started. They took him immediately for an MRI, a CAT scan. Then he had to get a biopsy of his brain. I remember looking up in Sunnybrook on the 4th floor in the hospital, and I looked up, and I'm sorry if people are going to get offended by this, but this is the truth. I looked up in the hall to Hashem, and I said, Hashem, how do you dare inflict an illness on my child, on my Avi? And out of all kids who suffered the most in his childhood, who went through the most, and you inflicted a brain tumor on my Avi? Do you know who you're doing this to? I will never, ever talk to you again. But before I stop talking, I will tell you one thing. I can say one thing about me. I'm one hell of a mother. And I would never do this to any Jewish child or to any child. Leave them alone. How dare you? And now I'm never talking to you again. And I walked away. And I did what I had to do. And it was beyond painful. It's an unimaginable pain to see your child so strong and handsome and beautiful with such personality withering away in front of your eyes day by day. There's no words. It's not even like normal. It's worse than not normal. But I made a decision that I'm going to wake up every morning, I'm going to take a shower, and I'm going to put on makeup, and I'm going to start my day with a great attitude. And that's what I did every morning. I came down, dressed, and I said, Avala, what's your favorite breakfast in the world? Anything you want. It could be pancakes. It could be grilled cheese fried. It could be French toast. It could be anything you want. And he told me what he wanted. And I said, great. And I made it. We ate. We put on tefillin. We talked. I didn't shed a tear in front of him. But I will tell you, my teeth are all grinded in the back to such a degree where I thought for sure there's something wrong with my ear, but I was biting because I wouldn't let him see me despair in front of him. I wouldn't despair in front of him. I would just say, every day you're getting better and better. And that's how it's going to be.
Where does that inner strength, you had twofold. One, you're angry. You're obviously angry at Hashem. You're angry at God. But there's a certain resilience and strength that you displayed every morning to get up and change that mindset. Where does that come from? How did you come up with that and do that on a regular basis and to not cry in front of your son when you see that and to have that strength? Where does that come from?
It's one word. Pure love for my child. In school, it doesn't only start when your kid is sick. It starts when he's born. And if things happen in elementary school, and let's say he got into a fight with somebody and his shirt was ripped or something, what do you think? I never came to school to kill that kid.
My mom did once.
Yeah. I said, Avi, who's bothering you? Tell me who. The minute I finished my teaching, I got dressed, I went to school. I said, don't you ever touch my kid again. Never touch a kid by the name of Silver. Is that clear? And I went and I did for it. And I was at every PTA meeting, every curriculum meeting, spoke to the teachers constantly. Why? Because I loved him. I love all my kids. What don't you do for your child at every level of when they're growing up? Everything. There were times when, as Avi was an adult already, he wasn't home on a Motzei Shabbos. It was like 1:30 in the morning. I double locked my door, put a coat over my pajamas, and I went looking for him. I thought he's here, and I went, I found him. I said, Avi, come home. and I'm driving all your other friends home too. And I did. He says, Ma, you're embarrassing me. I said, good. You'll never do it again. You'll never do that again. And he knows. He knows that I love him. And it wasn't a one-time thing. It was throughout his whole life. But this was the ultimate tragedy. My Avi should be sick. What does that mean? On the other side, what he didn't see was that we contacted that. Number one, I want to say again, the city of Toronto is beyond amazing. We have amazing people that are hidden within our community. And when something like this strikes, everybody comes out of the woodworks. For example, my friend's husband, Sam Axelrod, drove all the way to Cleveland after a fast to get Avi's MRI files to Cleveland Clinic. Well, we could have mailed it on a Friday and it would possibly got there like Tuesday. Until the secretary would have given it to him, it would have been another few days. So he drove from Toronto straight to Cleveland Clinic, handed it in person to the big doctor there to look at. We had people like Menachem Kuhl who got in touch with this big rabbi in Bnei Brak who has big doctors working 24/7. That when people are sick and they send their MRIs and whatever their sickness is, they find the best doctors worldwide. We sent Avi's MRIs to Korea. We called up, there's a doctor in Yerushalayim who's just made a new discovery on brain tumors. I spoke directly to him because I called, and he finally called me back. And I said, what is the latest? Because this is what my son has. I sent you the MRI. We covered the world, and nothing would have stopped us to take him anywhere where he could get a refuah.
So talk about that a little more, about the strangers. Like, Chai Lifeline came into your life.
Absolutely.
And I will say that Avi was a bit older than our regular clients.
Right.
I got involved, Chai Lifeline got involved because your other son,
David, yeah, was a volunteer.
When I needed a volunteer, a number one volunteer, he was there. And he was there for a number of kids who, to this day love him. Yeah. And when I heard our number one volunteer has a brother who's not well, I don't care about age. We're just going to,
take
age
care
is just
of
a
him.
number. We have to take care of our own. And we did. Yeah. But I want to hear about what was that like for you, having all of these people kind of garner their support in their own way?
So when they all came out of their woodworks and they played music, Chai Lifeline brought in famous singers because Avi loved music. And they drove, my daughter Dasi and Rachel Mindy Axelrod, now her name is Hofstetter, they drove to the cottage like 2 hours away to Dr. Bernstein, who works in another hospital. He's a neurologist, oncologist, to bring them Avi's MRI. They drove, and the doctor said to them, why would you believe, he's a Jewish doctor, Dr. Bernstein, he says, why would you believe in God when he did this to your brother, Dasi? And Dasi says, and what about all the other good things that God does? Did we ever talk about those things?
Wow.
That's what this little 17-year-old girl said. What about all the good things? This is another thing, and we're going to deal with it. That doctor loved her so much, he invited them for dinner. Of course, it wasn't kosher, but they stayed and they talked to him a lot about God. And he was very, very inspired by this kid. So when the people came forth and wanted help and ran to do various things, whether it was Chai Lifeline with meals and bringing in musicians and singers and I was so touched. And I said and I cried. I cried tears of happiness. And I looked up at God. I said, even though I'm not talking to you, I will say one thing. At least, look at your people. Look how good these Jews are. They're your people. Give them some credit.
That's kind of where I wanted to bring in, like, when I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of heartbreak, but was joy in there. Because I saw the videos on YouTube. I saw the whole thing going, what took place at that point. And I saw the amount of people, the amount of love, the amount of support, the musicians coming in, the concerts, the shows that you guys had for Avi. And it was just, the support there was absolutely phenomenal. It's not something you get to see every day with that kind of support system around you.
It gave me strength, and it gave me belief in people, in our Jewish nation, which is, we can make mistakes. Okay, we're normal, we're human, but we're good. We're the best. We're the best of all nations, because nobody does such chesed like our Jewish people. People do good things, but nobody like us. So we make mistakes. So what? But in general, collectively, people ran for me. People did for me. People cooked for me. Jewish people that are famous singers flew in just to be with Avi for an hour or two. People gave their homes for concerts. People slept over in the hospital so I could have like a few hours of rest, like his last 3 months. There's no people in this world like the Jewish people and the people of Toronto and New York, how they flew in and what they did. I've never seen anything like it. And that's what gave me strength.
It's amazing. It's such a widespread family that we have, like Jews all over the place. Toronto's community, I know it's obviously not as big as New York's, but at the same time, it's that intertwined that you can get that kind of connectivity.
When Avi said to me, like when he was home, he was only in the hospital for the last 3 months, but when he was home, he says, Ma, do you think we can have a concert tonight? I said, of course. Anything Avi wants, he gets. I called up Tzvi Brown. He says, oh, Avi wants a concert? We'll have everybody round up in 20 minutes. Amazing. Tzvi Brown, Hesher Kunreich, Moshe Feder, I forgot his name. He plays beautiful guitar, electric guitar. I'm so sorry, I forgot his name. He lives on Fairholme, whatever. Sorry, people on the podcast, but forgot his name. Anyway, and they came within 20 minutes. They set up a whole band. Singers. I'll never forget one Pesach. It was the second days of Pesach. It was a Friday. It was Erev Shabbos, Erev Pesach. And we're all cooking and busy, and Avi's hospital bed was in my family room. And he says, Ma, do you think we could have a concert? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's Erev Shabbos, Erev second day's Pesach. I said, we're going to try. Made one phone call. Baruch Levine came, who was actually my student. And the house was the fullest that I've ever seen in my life. From his hospital bed in the family room, all the way to my kitchen, wall to wall, on an Erev Shabbos, on an Erev Pesach, singing. But not only was it singing, it was tefillah, it was davening. People sang songs, and people cried when they were singing songs. It was a tefillah, it was a prayer to make Avi well, to heal him. On an Erev Shabbos and Erev Pesach, people, tons of people, like as if they had nothing to do, as if it was a Sunday. Who does that? Who does that? Nobody. Nobody does that. But they did it for Avi. And there were also many, many wonderful rabbis who came to me, and they tried to comfort me when Avi was sick. And they told me a lot of good things, and everything was noted, and I appreciated their goodness. They wanted to make me feel better. But nothing really, really touched me, except for Rabbi Chaim Mendel Brodsky from the Mesivta. I remember one time, a long time ago, I worked with him on a shidduch for somebody. And I was sitting with this wonderful Rosh Yeshiva, and I was thinking, wow, he's like so normal. I like him because he's normal. So I always had that in mind. So now I asked one of my nephews, do you think Rabbi Brodsky will speak to me? And he got back to me right away. My nephew says, 100%, come over at this time. And I went over. And I went into Rabbi Brodsky's office, and I told him, I said, listen, I will never be offended if you throw me out of your house, because what I'm going to say may offend you, and I totally get it. No hard feelings. And I repeated to him what I repeated to you earlier about God and looking up and saying, I will never talk to you again. And I said it. And he was looking down at the desk, and he was like taking it in. Like he seemed like he was hurt. So I thought he was hurt by what I said about God. But he wasn't hurt about what I said. He was hurt for me. He felt my pain. And he looked up to me and he says, Bracha, Mrs. Silver, he said, you are a utopian mother. There's no other mother like you. And what you did and what you said was exactly what a mother should do. Your job is to protect Avi and to fight for him and to do everything that you can do for him. So you did your job perfectly. And then he very humbly said, if you allow me to just share something with you. And for the next hour and a half, he shared wonderful things with me, and it touched me, and I changed my attitude. He told me that life with these things is like a tapestry. You know, you have a beautiful picture, you have your thread, and you're sewing according to the patterns and the colors, and then you turn it over, you tie a knot, and you start your next color. But then sometimes you forget a color from this corner, so you have to go back. Anyway, the back of the tapestry looks like a mess. Mm-hmm. But when you turn it over, you see a perfect, beautiful picture with all the right colors in place. And that's what this is about. And it touched me because I was never educated like that. I never heard anything like that before. So it made me feel better. And then he gave me other such examples in a very humble, careful way. And it touched me. And after an hour and a half of him teaching me these things, what the Torah says, I came out of there and I said, Rabbi Brodsky, I feel like I just went to rehab. I'm like I'm like a rehabilitated person. I feel like a person now. So maybe I'll talk to God sometimes. I'm still a little bit angry, but I'm not as angry as before because I know that there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger picture. Who says Bracha Silver has to understand everything? But I understood enough from him to know that it's not for nothing. It's not just bad luck. There's a reason that every neshama comes down to this world. And we have to rectify and do what we have to do. And this is not really the real life. The real life is in the next world. But we have to go through what we have to go through in this world. So I felt like a new person. And I felt stronger.
Amazing. How did this affect your other kids? What were they going through at this point? What was their support system like?
Yeah, you shared a beautiful story before we started.
So it's so interesting. I just told Morty before we started. So I belong to this thing called The Tapestry. And it's a beautiful magazine written by two mothers in New York who also have lost children due to cancer. And they collect articles and poems and stories, very authentic. They also have a section that are for siblings. So Tapestry is for parents, and they have another part of the magazine which is for siblings. So I just last night, which I shared with Morty just now, my son Sally wrote the most beautiful article.
He's the youngest, right?
Yeah, he's my youngest boy. He's my fifth boy.
How old is he?
Right now, he's about 29.
Okay.
So and I knew this was, as it was happening, I know this, and then he wrote it down, he articulated this in the magazine, and it was published. He was going to university at the time when Avi was sick. And he used to visit Avi a lot. And he used to be a very sensitive soul. And he used to cry a lot for Avi. All the wires that were attached to him. And Avi had a trach. And Avi had a feeding tube. And he was it was just an awful sight to see, to keep this kid alive. And Sally used to come to the hospital, and Wednesday night was his time to come. Anyway, he used to come, and while he was going through taking 1 million courses in UFT, and then he couldn't do UFT, and he couldn't do UFT anymore because he was so pained by Avi. And one day he decided, after about 6-7 months, that he's going to pick himself up and he's going to continue his university. This was after Avi passed away. And he's just going to get a degree because he says in the article that if he would not have finished his CPA, Avi would have been mad at him. Avi would have killed him. You're in the hospital because of me. You go finish your university. You go finish your CPA. And he said he knows Avi would have been mad at him and angry at him if he wouldn't have finished. So he finished, but the pain that he went through, watching his brother, all of them, the oldest one, Simcha, used to come to the ICU and he used to put tefillin and tzitzis on Avi. And I, as a mother, I used to get so angry. Simcha, why are you putting on tefillin on him? He's wrapped up in so many wires. Why put on the tefillin? He says, Mommy, you don't know the impact of the malachim over him, watching him, what this does for his neshama. And I let him, but I was just looking from a practical perspective. Like, I just didn't want him to be bound up any more than he was already. My second son, David Tzvi, who's a tzaddik, he's a Hatzalah guy. And every day while Avi was home, and those two never really got along because they were total opposites. David Tzvi was straight-laced, well-educated, davened every day in shul, did everything by the books. And Avi was the opposite. But the most painful thing, it's funny how Hashem works. Because David Tzvi was a Hatzalah man, he was the one that had to give Avi his shot every single day in his stomach for his blood clot. And it was very painful for David Tzvi to do that, because it was, number one, regularly painful for a brother to hurt. It still stings and hurts. But especially for David Tzvi, he didn't want to inflict any more pain on him. And David Tzvi used to tell me many times, Mommy, relax, don't get nervous. He's sick. He's sick. Not that I ever was angry at Avi, but it was hard physical work. He was 6 foot tall. He was a big boy. And many times I had to change him all the time. And I'm like this 5'1" person. It's very hard for me to, it was hard. It was physically hard, but more so emotionally hard. And he says, Ma, do it calm. See, he always used to give me chizuk, like, remember who we're dealing with. He's not well. And then Menachem, my sweetness, he was just laughing with Avi, holding his hand. Painful. We all cried. We cried. And Dasi had to go to seminary that year to Israel. She didn't want to go. What happens if something happens and I won't be here? Avi says, you go to seminary with all your friends. And that's what you're supposed to do. But we all cried. My little Dasi, before she went to seminary, she used to lie in Avi's hospital bed with him every Shabbos afternoon and read him books and stories and just hug him and just lie in his bed with him, in the hospital bed we had in our family room and talk to him and let him drink water. And when he needed the bathroom and he couldn't move, she says, I'm giving you this, but I'm going out of the room. And when you're finished, you give it to me. And don't worry about it. I'll dispose of it. Don't worry. She was a little girl. But she had such sense and such compassion. So it's almost been 9 years. There's not, honestly, I'm not just saying it. There's not a day that goes by that we don't talk about Avi and what he would say and what he would do and how he would laugh and what he would say to this person and to that person. And there's not a day that goes by. There was one more other thing I just wanted to tell you. You know, Avi loved ice cream. So he used to like these Nestle ice cream cones with chocolate and peanuts on them.
Drumsticks.
Yeah. So he says, Ma, could I have one for breakfast? I said, of course you could. Ma, can I have another one? Could you eat one with me? Great, I started my diet and it's shine. But for Avi, yes, Avi, I will eat an ice cream with you. Ma, can we have another one? I said, of course you could have another one. Anyway, as the day was going, just like we want Mashiach to come, I'm not exaggerating the story. He had 14 ice creams in one day. I called the doctor emergency, the big oncologist, neurologist, Dr. James Perry. I said, Dr. Perry, it's Bracha Silver. It's an emergency. It's my fault. I'm going to be the one that's going to, you know what, Avi? And I gave him 14 ice cream cones in one day. What did I do to him? You could arrest me. Like, I made him sick. And I was crying, and I felt so bad that he called me back from his house, Dr. Perry. And he says, Bracha, this should be the worst problem. Even if he has 20 ice creams a day, we could deal with that. We could deal with diabetes. We could deal with everything. Let him enjoy it. I said, so did I harm him? Did I make it worse? He says, no, you didn't make it worse. This has nothing to do with... I said, are you sure? Yeah. But he had 14 ice creams in one day.
It's my kind of guy.
Yeah, 14 in one day I gave him. Because I couldn't say no to him. But I never could say no to Avi. Avi was too charming his whole life. Could never say no to Avi.
It seems that you're, with kids and everything, it's like everybody had their designated role that they assigned themselves.
Right. According to what they wanted, how they felt comfortable.
Right.
I never would impose any task on them, except for David Tzvi, because he was Hatzalah. I couldn't, like when I get a needle or a blood test, to this day I had 6 kids. I couldn't look at one, I still can't look at a blood test. I'm not medically, inclined, but he was the one that had to do it. And it was hard for him. Not only physically, because that's what he's good at, but I think more emotionally.
So if I can take you back a bit, when the diagnosis came through, at that point, obviously, you told God you're not talking to him anymore, you were done with him for a bit. But what else was going on through your mind at that point?
I was so angry. My anger, how do you do this to my child? And why to Avi? Because I always felt like Avi, out of all my kids, suffered the most. Why? He was the most rambunctious. He always got into trouble. He was always the one that, it was like always Avi. And again, it should be Avi. I was trying to get out of it. And now he's sick? Him? It shouldn't happen to any Jewish kid. It shouldn't happen to any kid altogether, Jewish or not. But to him, out of all people, didn't he have enough emotional pain his whole life that he went through in elementary school and in high school when he wasn't accepted into a yeshiva that he wanted to go to? And we waited and we waited and we waited and he still wasn't accepted. And then, he went off the derech. And that was painful for everybody. And for him, he went through so much in this world. And now to be inflicted with a brain tumor? And it wasn't only one brain tumor. It was 3 huge ones that were coming out in different parts of his brain. That's what the doctor who did the biopsy said. He's never seen anything like it. He's never seen. You see a brain tumor, you see one type. But he had for sure 3 major types. That was unheard of. So I was like so angry, but I feel that there's a very, very thin line between anger and pain and hurt. I was angry because I was so hurt. And listen, to this day, I teach, and I'm a good mother, and I'm a good grandmother, and I love all my children and grandchildren. But I cry. I cry a lot. And people see when there's a yontif, and the worst thing is, when there's a wedding, it pains me to stand there at my child's wedding. I look to see if I could find Avi's soul, if I could have a glimpse of him. Where are you? I can't stand there without him. It's painful every second I stand in a picture. Where are you? Let me just see you. Be in the picture. It's not complete. It just pains me. Pictures pain me a lot because he's not there.
So I wanted to ask, after he passed and you had a house filled to the brim with people day after day, once all that subsided, how did you carry on? How did you pick yourself up and get to where you are?
So the first thing I always do, I could have been lying in bed and crying all day. I could have been depressed. I had every right to be depressed. I was a single mother of 6 children. I did it on my own. I had a lot of reason. When I used to schlep Avi to radiation, he only wanted me. That means 5 days a week to Sunnybrook for radiation. I take the wheelchair out of the car. I sit him in the wheelchair. I drive him into the hospital, park him, run all the way back to the parking lot in Sunnybrook, which was very far, walked all the way up, brought him for radiation, and he only wanted me. And I did it every time. But how did I feel after? I made a decision because I'm a fighter. And I'm angry that he's not here. So my feistiness and my anger kept me going.
It's so interesting to me that your anger propels you to positivity in a certain sense.
Yeah.
And so talk to me about, I want to kind of change gears a little
Sure.
bit with that anger that you had, and angry at God and angry at the whole situation, angry for Avi, angry that he's not here. And you took that and you propelled it into positive emotions. I want to get to Team Avi soon, but before we get to Team Avi, how does that work? How does that anger turn? Because people associate anger with negativity.
Right.
So how do you take that anger and turn it positive?
So I have a thing by me, you call it a shita, a way. And I say, I don't do anything without a shower and makeup. That's my armor. Every day. I say, if I can do that, that's one step. I go down, I drink a coffee. I say to Hashem, don't think for a minute I'm still not angry at you, because you still took my baby away. You gave him to me, and you took him away. But I will say thank you to you for all the good things that you did give me. Like lots of good people, kind people that did things for me that I never knew loved me so much. That's a wonderful thing. I thanked him for the financial help I got because I couldn't work for 2 years. And I was the sole supporter of all my 6 children with Hashem's help. But thank you for that. I'm a very big believer in saying thank you for what you do have. You have to, the same way you look at the bad and you look at the hurt and the pain, you still have to also look at the good. You can't be an ungrateful person. You got to look at the good. So I listed all the things that I'm grateful for because I'm an honest person. And then I always said at the end, don't think I'm 100% your friend. I'm still angry at you. And I don't even care why you took him. I'm not even interested. I just want him back.
So it's looking at the whole picture.
The whole picture. And you have to. You have to be a grateful person. That's what it is. You have to be a mensch.
It's perspective.
Perspective.
But it's an incredible perspective because coming from somebody who's gone through so much, to still have that attitude of gratitude, as they say, is an incredibly powerful thing.
Wow.
And I want to take us now to Team Avi and that story, and taking that anger and propelling it into raising. It's gonna be close to almost $1 million. It's gonna be $1 million at some point. It's a lot of money that you've raised.
Getting there, yeah.
To help children who are suffering from serious illnesses, just as your Avi did. Tell me about that. Tell me about kind of breaking the. There's probably a threshold. I came to you and I said, "Hey, will you run a half marathon?" And you're like, "Is he crazy? What's wrong with this guy?" But tell me about that. You broke that threshold. That anger propelled you, and actually created inspiration for hundreds, if not thousands, you could say, because Team Avi really is a force within Team Lifeline. People know Team Avi, and it pushes the other teams to do more as well. So
Right.
Talk to me about that, please.
All right. So they say, like, even though it's going to be 9 years that he's going to be passed away, it's really, it sounds crazy, but I'm only really now starting to believe that he's not really coming back. Like, I go to the cemetery a lot. I used to go after he passed away at least once or twice a week for a very long time. And I always used to go there, and I always used to start my conversation with him. Avi, this is where I have to come? Because every time I found him in a pool joint or wherever, Avi, this is where I have to come. Now I have to come here to the cemetery? So, what was the question?
Team Lifeline,
Yeah.
breaking those mindsets.
So, we met Daniel Greif, who was really helpful to us when we were going through our journey with Avi. And it was in Miami, actually, and Daniel said, Bracha, why don't you come to Chai Lifeline Shabbos lunch? And he invited me and my son Sally were there, and we said, okay, thank you. We saw what it was like. And he says, Bracha, let's do a Team Avi. I said, wow, let's do a Team Avi. What does it take to do Team Avi? The reason also I did it was because I finally admitted that there was nothing else I could do for Avi because he wasn't here in this world. So what else could I do? What could I do to like awaken his soul and to make him alive and to and for like I wanted people to remember him, and you know, I wanted God to take care of him because I don't trust anybody, only myself. But anyway, what could we do? We're going to do a Team Avi. And I said, yes. What does it take? So we do a marathon. I said, what's a marathon? I went to Beis Yaakov. Like, who does a marathon? We just cook and bake and, you know, listen to a shir. Marathon? What's a marathon?
So you sit down and watch a bunch of shows at once.
So then I said, guess what? For my Avi, I will do anything. And Morty set me up with a trainer, Akiva. And boy, he worked me out. I never ran in my life. I walked, but who runs? And we went to the track twice a week, and we walked faster. And then I had homework to do, and we met every morning in the winter till right before, from October to January. Akiva and I met every single morning at the track at 6 o'clock in the morning, because I had to go to work after.
In the winter,
in the rain, in the sun. It could have been hot, it could have been freezing, could have been stung. We met. And every time I said to myself, Avi, you know that I like eating chocolate and goodies. This is so not my type. But for you, I will do it for you. I will raise money. If this is what's good for your neshama, to raise money, tzedakah, to give to other children in your merit, we're going to do it. And that's it. And at the time, I lost 45 pounds, which I never did in my whole life. I ran the marathon, 13 and a half miles. And I also did homework. Akiva gave me homework. Aside from him training me twice a week, I had to do homework after work. I had to go from my house, run a couple miles, and I did it every single day till I got so addicted to walking and running. It was such a great feeling. It made me feel good. Yeah. And every time I had in mind, Avi, this is for you. This is for you. This is for you.
And Avi was so health conscious, so it was
it's
perfect, yeah.
And he always wanted me to lose weight and look good, so. But I wanted the tzedakah. I wanted the money for Chai. And it should be credited to his account in Shemayim. And then my sons did it, and my friends did it. I even remember we were sitting right before Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur. It was me and two other friends. I won't mention their names, two other ladies. And right before Ne'ilah started, and the fast already was starting, I said, I know this is not the right time, but you got to do the marathon with me. And I told them about the marathon right before Ne'ilah.
Wow, the holiest time of the year.
I'm not Ne'ilah. I'm sorry. Kol Nidre. Still. And they said, what marathon? I said, we're going to run in Avi's name. It's going to be called Team Avi. And you just have to run. We go to Miami. We raise this amount.
It's fine.
You're going to do it. I said, look, you're both skinnier than me. So, why not? And they said, fine. And they were on my team. And more people joined. And I did it.
You don't even know some of them, right?
Some of them I don't even know. And the cutest thing was, all of a sudden, out of the woodwork, a lot of Avi's friends that were female came over to me and said, I know Avi. I said, oh, how do you know Avi? And whatever. We're going to run on the team.
That's
great.
Beautiful. I have a story about Avi. He must have been in the club scene or the bar scene, and people knew him. And after he passed away, I started getting phone calls from some people on that they wanted to throw a big party in his memory, and they wanted to do it on Pesach, and I had to kind of put the kibosh on it in terms of because of the alcohol and stuff.
Sure.
It was an issue, but he was so loved. It's not like I don't get phone calls for people who want to do everybody wanted to give in their own way, and I think that really spoke from what it sounds like. I didn't know him well. I only met him at the end of his life.
Right.
But he and it's the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The way you describe how each child was allowed to flourish in their own way and support Avi in their own way, I venture to guess it would be the same thing. He probably was the same, and he'd be proud that every person is now keeping his memory alive in their own way.
Exactly.
And doing it,
And I'm sure he's smiling down. There was one story, Chai Lifeline had a beautiful event where mothers of children that passed away, they gave them a day at the spa. At this place, this manicure place, you can get a manicure, a pedicure, whatever. Anyway, so I went, and I was speaking to one of my friends. She was sitting next to me while we were getting the manicures, and we were talking about our kids. And I said, yeah, my Avi, the manicurist, all Filipinos, said, Avi? How do you know Avi? I said, oh, he's my son. How do you know, Avi? And she starts talking Filipino. 500 Filipino ladies who were giving manicures. Stop. You're Avi's mom. We loved Avi. Avi came here with Simcha Goldman. And I said, he came to get a mat. He goes, yeah, he came to get his toes done. He was too lazy to cut his own toenails. And they said they were crying and they were hugging me. I'm not exaggerating. At least 5 Filipino ladies came running up to me. I said, Avi, this is an achis.
You think he's up to no good when he's up, but really this is what he's doing.
But he's changing the world. He's making people happy.
He made his mark.
So.
And there's my Dasi, who's younger than him. All her little girlfriends in her class, I'm sure, had little crushes on him. And last year, we had a lovely girl from New York. She's a famous hairstylist. She joined Team Avi, Sarah Schipper. And just like other really special people are on Team Avi. And, and it's just, like for me as a mother, like Morty knows, any opportunity I get to talk about Avi, for me, he becomes alive. Nobody forgot about him. He's here. We're talking about him. We're remembering him. We're it's very, I have a good feeling about it. It makes me feel good. It's very comforting to talk about him and to do for him and to,
It's the best way of keeping someone alive is through their memories and stories, and like this kind of means.
So we're coming to the end of the conversation that we're recording, at least today. And is there anything that you want to finish with Avi? So
I even believe right now that Avi's here and he's listening to us. I think he's very proud of his whole family. And I know that he loves us very much. Because I feel it. And we love him. He's alive in our memories every single day. And to all other people who are suffering loss or any kind of sufferings, be angry. Fight. Don't just lie back and be in bed and be depressed. Get up and do something. You have to be able to feel your feelings. And all your feelings that you feel are right. And do something about it. Do something about it. Don't just lie there and be depressed and be in your bed. Fight. Fight, whether it's writing a marathon, whether it's writing a book, whether it's raising charity, whether anything you want. But don't just lie in bed and be sad. Fight against it. Fight against it. I still have this. It's like when I went to a therapist who specializes still in bereavement. She kept telling me, like I said, I'm so worried that he didn't eat for like a year. I know that he's buried. But I'm still like, now for sure, he didn't eat for about a year. He's for sure gone. But like, I couldn't really accept it. Just now, almost 9 years, I'm starting to believe but I was always like fighting to bring him down again. Like I was pulling him down again. I just can't let go. I still can't let go. But I would tell people that are suffering and that have loss, just keep fighting. Be angry. Anger is good. Every midah is good. And also midah means measurements. I'm not saying be an angry, miserable person. I'm not like that. Do something about it. Do something about it. Raise tzedakah. Run a marathon. There's so many things you could do. You could write a book. You could do a million things. But don't just lie in bed and be sad. Get up and move and do.
Well, you are certainly an inspiration in everything that you do, and the strength that you show, and how you care and give back to people who are also struggling. it's a beautiful thing, and I want to say thank you very much for giving us your time today and for speaking with us, and hopefully we can share this as far and wide as possible and keep Avi's memory alive.
Absolutely.
Amen.
And continue to inspire people with your strength and everything that you do. Thank you, Mora Bracha.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody, for listening. I always tell Morty, it's therapeutic for me to talk. If I have an opportunity and listeners who want to hear, for me, it's a good feeling. It helps me live.
Well, thank
So thank you guys, too.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bracha, for sharing Avi's and your story with us. Out of such a heartbreaking story came such beauty in the form of community, strength, and even Team Avi for Team Lifeline. We interviewed Moish Turk earlier and spoke about Team Lifeline and what it means to people, and we spoke a little bit about Team Avi and how it's such an inspiring story and how it inspired others to create teams for loved ones. We will never truly understand the loss of a loved one, but we do see what is created from it. So thank you again to the listeners as well. Even though the story is a sad one about loss and grief, there is beauty in there. Sometimes we just have to dig a little further to find it. If you are enjoying the podcast so far, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, or wherever it is you're listening from. On Air with Chai is a Chai Lifeline Canada project produced by myself, Bryan Strasberg, hosted by myself and the Chai Lifeline Canada Executive Director, Mordechai Rothman. Guests are booked by Orly Davis, and graphic design is done by Candice Alper. On Air with Chai is edited by myself, and the music is provided by Music Unlimited at pixabay.com. To learn more about Chai Lifeline and how you can help us, please visit our website at chailifelinecanada.org.